All right, good morning, everyone on the West Coast, and good afternoon to everyone here on the East Coast. My name is Nicole Foster, and we're really excited to have you here for our third installment of Read 180 Office Hours. For those of you that are joining us for the first time, we started Office Hours a few weeks ago, and what we wanted to do was be able to provide you with quick tips on how to implement Read 180 effectively in your classroom, especially as we get ready for back to school. So thank you for joining us for our third installment. I'm excited to be joined by Patricia Starek. She has held many roles here with us on the Read 180 team as well as at Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, but I'd love for her to be able to introduce herself and give us a little taste of her background. So everyone, welcome Patricia Starek.
Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Patricia. I'm thrilled to be here with you today. I started out as a classroom teacher in the New York City public schools, teaching in a special ed environment, teaching struggling readers, and then had the privilege for many years to support teachers in the classroom, Read 180 and System 44, and now I've joined the team developing the next version of Read 180.
So Patricia is always my go-to person on Read 180. She knows it from so many different perspectives, from someone who has helped develop the program to someone who's helped train teachers on the program, and now someone who's helping to build out the future iterations of this program. So she is a wealth of knowledge, and so we're really excited to have her here. And today she's joining us to talk about characteristics of an effective Read 180 teacher and why that means so much to me as we're talking about this and getting ready for back to school. As I told many of you in the first episode, I'm a former Read 180 teacher, and so for me, this is sort of like an exclusive club of educators who are just fiercely passionate, dedicated, committed, and I think we're a small niche of people who really just intervention just sort of flows through our blood. And so to really think about getting the year started off right and what are those most important characteristics of our most effective Read 180 teachers, I think is going to be a great conversation for us. So I'm going to turn it over to Patricia to get us started.
All right, everybody. So I have had the great privilege of being in hundreds to thousands of Read 180 classrooms and seeing teachers who really range the gamut in their style. And I think one of the most important things to start out with is to be effective doesn't mean that you are one certain type of teacher, but you embody a few specific characteristics, right? Sometimes teachers will seem so effortless, but they're really doing some very calculated things. So we're going to walk through a few of those characteristics and then open it up to some questions from you guys. Starting off, Read 180 teachers are engaged, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Engaged in a few varieties. Read 180 teachers are data geeks. They're data-driven. We talk about being data-driven, but what does that really mean? I found that Read 180 teachers also have systems in place. They are system makers. One other piece is that they really, really rock their independent reading. That's part of the blended model for Read 180. And finally, without doubt, Read 180 teachers have heart, and there are a few things that feed into that.
And I think those are really 5 great points to anchor the conversation on. And as I think about, Patricia and I also spend a lot of time in the field together with customers, and I think you're right. Those are sort of the 5 anchoring principles that you see across the board. Everyone brings your own unique style to the classroom, but across the board, these are sort of the 5 fundamental principles that really allow a teacher to flourish in a Read 180 classroom.
Yeah, I would agree. We'll start off talking about engagement a little bit. We'll start off talking about being a data geek. So, times have changed. I know almost all of the educators that I'm out there with have expectations. They have data walls. They're using data, but over and over I hear, I've got so much data, I don't quite know what to do with it. So what does a data geek do with their data? There are a few sort of grounding principles for them. When you're in a Read 180 classroom, first of all, you start off typically with a reading inventory. And so you've got some initial information, and that can help you sort of level set who your class is. I've worked with middle school teachers, high school teachers. They often say, I don't really know my students as a reader. So getting to know who they are as a reader initially, that can help you with placement. Another key place that you can use data is to differentiate. I think this is critical. All of the research tells us that small group instruction is really one of the pillars that move students.
Yep.
The data can move you there. And then finally, and this is a part that I find not all Read 180 teachers capitalize on, is using the data to motivate. Mm-hmm. So how do you share it with the students? Can you share it with the students, and how can they build some of their own personal goals?
And what are some of the research? I see that you brought some stuff with us, Patricia, if you want to share that with everyone.
Yeah, so I know some of you out there are using Read 180 Universal. If you are, you would have received this assessment and analytics guide.
Yep.
This is going to talk you through all the different types of assessment that are available to you, from formative assessment to the assessment for the reading inventory to the assessment during the workshops. So check that out. And if you are an NG user or next generation, your placement assessment and reporting guide, which we call the PARG fondly, will walk you through some of the critical reports.
And you know we love our an acronym. So for our universal users, it's our AAG, our Assessment and Analytics Guide. And for our Read 180 Next Generation users, it's our PARG, so our Placement Assessment and Reporting Guide. So two great resources. They're available both print and digitally, but they really help with that foundational principle of being a data geek, using data to really drive instruction, not data for the sake of data. And along those lines, Patricia, I'd love to talk to you about we hear the buzzword data all the time, and we always seem to find that we are data rich, but information poor. And so when you think about being in classrooms all the time, how is Read 180 uniquely positioned, whether you have Next Generation or you have Universal, to really sort of flip that dynamic and really think about how can we be data rich and information rich with a Read 180 classroom?
So I think one of the critical things is the data's right there at your fingertips. It's real-time data. On a daily basis, I've spoken with teachers. They've got immediate feedback, so they're not allowing students to make the same mistake over and over again. So it's immediately available. Another critical piece is that we have academic data, and we also have sort of social emotional data. We've brought in mindset into our work, and so students can be assessing their relationship to reading, and I think that's another critical piece.
And I know we came out with Read Universal last year for back to school, and a lot of our work on our team currently is really about getting out into the field and talking to educators, administrators, and seeing what's working and not working and what can we do better. So I'd love to hear from you as we've launched Universal, what were some of those key differences or changes that we made for Universal that you think are really going to be game changers for teachers in their classrooms?
Yeah, so I think that there's an observer tool where teachers, we've typically had data that really focused a lot on the application software piece. Now we have data that can really inform small group instruction and whole group instruction. And I think that formative assessment piece, that ongoing how are my students mastering or moving towards proficiency, is super helpful. And again, that data is available real time. It's immediate. You can immediately have that feedback and adjust your instruction.
So remember, immediate feedback, a great deal of information around a formative assessment, which I know across districts is huge. So take a look at that, and you have your AAG if you're a Universal user, or a PARG to really dive deeper into that and continue to be those proud data geeks that we are in the Read 180 classroom.
That's right. All right. Okay. On to the next. Engaged. So I think in any profession, if you're engaged, you're a happier person. We know that you are working with struggling readers. You are working with students who sometimes are 3 to 5 years below grade level. It is our mandate to engage with them. And if I think about engagement, there are a few key principles that sort of come to mind. Number one, use the structured engagement routines. They're called that for a reason, to engage your students. One of our thinkers, Kate Kinsella, says, students don't learn words by hearing them come out of our mouths, your mouths, the teacher. They hear them by using themselves. So there are a variety of structured engagement routines. If I had to name one, it would be the vocabulary routine. It gets students to use the words, to wield the words, and to really wrestle with them on a daily basis.
So you mentioned Dr. Kay Kinsella. One of her key phrases is putting miles on the tongue.
That's right.
Our kids get better with their academic language when they put miles on the tongue, and these structured engagement routines really are about facilitating that for teachers. Because I know when I was a first-year teacher, and when my kids would talk so much in class, I would get nervous and think that conversation was bad because it would look like my principal coming in and my class is unruly. But actually, when you have those structured engagement routines, that classroom discussion is essential to moving kids forward, and that structured engagement routine really allows a teacher to embed those best practices to allow to facilitate that conversation.
That's right. I think of it as productive noise.
Yes.
Right? A good classroom conversation. So they're there. They're outlined for you in your blended learning handbook or your teacher's edition. There are videos of those routines, but really try on a few yourself, and you'll find, I find even when I work with teachers, the nature of the conversation changes when I have folks talking to each other. Secondly, engage with current topics. I mean, does the module or the workshop that you're working on relate to something that's going on in the world? Bring that in. Bring real world experience. Don't feel hesitant to bring that right into your classroom. We've really tried carefully within Read 180 to connect to content, to engage with content, to make connections between content areas. And so feel free to do that with the content.
And I think what's great is when we go to visit classrooms and you see those discussions that are happening, that productive noise, and that they can make those real life connections to what's happening in real life. And so when you go into a classroom, for example, and they're reading about Malala, but they are hearing about her on the news, and they're able to bring that richness into the conversation that they're having in the classroom, that's key to really helping to accelerate learning, but also makes kids more engaged in what they're doing as well.
That's right. So for so many Read 180 students, this may be one of the first classrooms where they're really actively talking and participating, and we want to sort of move that, accelerate that momentum forward.
So I'd love to hear, Patricia, we talked just a little bit about engagement for the kids, but for our educators, what are some of the ways that they can stay engaged in sort of their development, whether they get coaching or training throughout the year, or maybe they don't get that? How can they stay engaged if they're not necessarily having someone come in every few weeks and doing sort of real-time coaching with them?
Yeah, so if they do have the real-time coaching, fantastic. You have consultants, professional service managers who are helping and really helping you move along your growth path as an educator. If you don't, the Read 180 community is an invaluable tool. That's where you are today. You'll find blogs. There's a resource there called Ask D, where you can ask a former Read 180 educator questions, and she'll respond to you quite quickly. So I would say those would be 3 central places for you.
Great. So let's go on to your third principle.
Yes. So Read 180 classrooms that are effective, rock independent reading. We are here because we're working with struggling readers. I have had students in my own classroom tell me, and when I'm out there in the world, that they've never read an entire book. Oftentimes teachers will say modeled and independent reading is a struggle. You have students who've never read a book. So you really want to think about how you can set them up for success. Have reading be the reward. We will have a reference on a blog that's coming out to one of the former episodes on setting up and monitoring independent reading with one of our colleagues who really gives you a lot of concrete ideas. But I can't emphasize this enough. There's a concept that I've thought about for a long time called the Matthew effect. And
Can you explain that for everyone?
I can, yeah. So they talk about how the rich get richer and the poor gets poor. The poor gets poor. That is exactly the reciprocal nature of reading. We find that students who read less are less proficient, those students who read more. So much as we've learned that proficient readers read about 2 million words a year, and our non-proficient readers are reading about 10,000 words a year. So there it is. So we really want to celebrate words read with them and give them, you have miles on the tongue, and I think of words in the head in time reading. I have seen Read 180 teachers who've read their Read 180 library. We've really chosen these books carefully to be engaging, to listen to the modeled and independent reading books on your way to work if you still have a CD player in your car or an MP3 player. I do recommend that you review the books and share them with your students, really hype them up. Also have them review the books with each other. Those are just a few small points, but I really do recommend that you go watch episode 2.
And I think that's an important point to emphasize, is that our team here at Houghton Mifflin Harcourt and on the Read 180 team, there's so many former educators, and so we know how important the engagement piece is and how important independent reading is. And so I remember when we were going through the development process for Next Generation and for Read 180 Universal, that everyone was reading every book. Our chief academic officer, the president of our division, our head of professional services, everyone was deeply engaged in making sure, even Patricia, who was in the field with us, we'd bring her into the office and we'd say, how would your kids in New York City be reacting to this? And so that engagement and really picking content that's going to get kids excited about reading is something I think that's fundamental. And I think all those pieces sort of allow for that rotation to not necessarily be, it's just a sit and get, but how does this become something where kids come alive, they're able to apply, and it's something where they see the fruits of their labor sort of play out.
Yep, agreed. Yeah, and so I think just to that point, can't emphasize enough taking advantage of the resources that are out there on the community. Episode 2, you'll find a variety of teachers who've posted on Pinterest different ways that they're monitoring and celebrating independent reading.
And so you can check out some of those previous office hours where we did talk about independent reading on our Read 180 social channels and also on the Read 180 educator community as well.
Yep. So third quality, Read 180 teachers are system makers. Effective teachers are system makers. This is blended learning. You do have small group going on. You have the student application going on, you have modeled independent reading. You do need to have some systems in place. That can be a little daunting initially for brand new teachers. I have found teachers become so effective that the classrooms run themselves. But you do want to think about those initial systems. Need my glasses here. One simple point, if you're just beginning and setting up your classroom right now, wherever you sit in small group, make sure you can see your students who are on the software and modeled independent reading. It's a simple way to set up the system or the management of your classroom. Beyond that, again, this is a 25-minute episode or a longer episode, but I do recommend that you check out our National Teacher, Read 180 Stage B Teacher of the Year, Amy Dendinger, her classroom. She's just done a blog with us on getting ready for the classroom. She has an immaculately organized classroom and a lot of systems in place, so I would direct you there. You need to think about systems that work for you and that create sort of a seamless rotation. And you do want to spend some time at the beginning setting up those systems. We don't expect you to have a full-blown 3 rotations the first day.
Yeah, and I think that point you said about creating systems that work for you and giving them time. I remember when I was a first-year teacher and I would go on teacher blogs or I'd talk to teacher friends and they were doing something new. So I was like, I'm going to take that and I'm going to do it in my classroom. But it wasn't really my style and it didn't really work for me. And so I think finding the systems that work for you, giving them the time and properly taking the time to set it up. And so we're not expecting that a Read 180 classroom is going to run flawlessly in the first week or two. It's going to take time to put those in place, and really acknowledging that and planning for that, I think, also makes teachers really successful. But again, making it your own is going to be key, and giving yourself time and patience to be able to do that.
Okay. Last but absolutely not least, the teachers who are effective Read 180 teachers have a heart for the job. Big parts. They are excited to be working with struggling readers. And when I think about that, heart can seem fluffy, but we all know heart is really, really deep. And there are a few sort of key characteristics. Those teachers with a heart for the job, they love their students. And combine that with a growth mindset. That is, I know I've got struggling readers, but I know with proper intervention, with the right practice, that they will grow. So they come into the classroom, and especially after you've been a Read 180 teacher for a few years, you begin to see the fruits of your labors and their labors and really see that they can grow. One other piece sort of combined with that is that you are working with students who've experienced some failure. And there's a lot of vulnerability there. And I think sitting right next to a student who might be 3 to 5 years below grade level, you have to figure out a way to be sensitive to their starting point, but not hold them back because of their starting point. Have those high expectations. Do the stretch reads with them. Really stretch them on the writing that they're doing. Expect them to use that academic vocabulary. So it's a combination of real sensitivity to where they are and high expectations and hope for where they can go. And finally, those teachers celebrate student successes with certificates, with words read, just simply by acknowledging which topic they are in the software, helping them keep track of that, but really helping students celebrate.
And I think that's important because every one of those little wins turns into a huge success story at the end. And so I'd love, as we sort of wrap up your presentation, Patricia, can you tell me about one of your favorite Read 180 memories?
I have so many of them. Some of them involve teachers who frankly were resistant at the beginning and then have become sort of full-blown fantastic implementers of Read 180. But I'll tell you a quick story. We were at a conference with Read 180 teachers from all over the country a few years ago, and there was a break, and one of our teachers went out to a Starbucks, and there was a young woman working there. And she said, "What are you all here for?" And she was like, "Well, you might not know, but we're all here for this program called Read 180.
I remember that,
And the young woman working at Starbucks said, Read 180 changed my life. I mean, there it is. There she is. She become a parent. She was in junior college, and she was set on a trajectory to independence and success. So I think that is what happens inside of a Read 180 classroom, and we hear those stories over and over again.
Well, thank you, Patricia, for joining us this afternoon. I see we have a question that's come in. If you have questions, please feel free to chat. Type them into the Facebook feed that's showing the live feed right now. So one question that's coming is System 44 the precursor? So if you can give a little background on what System 44 is,
Yep.
System 44 is,
Sure.
that would be great.
So System 44 grew out of Read 180 after we'd been implementing it for a number of years. There were many students who were in the level 1 part of Read 180 who were not making progress. So we really tried to unpack what that was about. Read 180 is predominantly for students who were struggling with fluency and academic vocabulary and comprehension. We realized that there was a group of students, 3rd grade and up and 4th grade and up, all the way into high school, who were still not decoders, which is where System 44 was developed from that need to work with those older non-decoders. And it's called System 44 because it's based on the 44 sounds and the 26 letters in the English language.
Great. And when you think about what we've talked about today, the characters of effective Read 180 teacher, do you feel that's the same for System 44 as well?
Absolutely. I think some of our System 44 teachers, I don't know if it's possible, have a even bigger heart. These are children and young people who really don't know basic sound symbol, who've made it all the way to high school in some cases without being fluent decoders, who are doing a lot of masking, a lot of avoidance behavior. So I think oftentimes they have a tougher shell to work with, but absolutely they're going to have the systems, they're going to be analyzing the data, and they got the big heart.
So we encourage you to keep sending us questions. For those questions that we can't answer today, we'll make sure to follow up with you afterwards. But I want to thank Patricia again for joining us. She's just, obviously, you can see one of our best representations of why we're so passionate about reading intervention, and how we know how important the teachers out here who are watching us today and who will watch us afterwards, after we post the video, are to the students that we serve. So we're really excited that you all joined us for our first inaugural series of our Read 180 office hours. We will be taking a couple weeks off, and then we will be back in gear for back to school in this fall. So we hope you join us again. We will be posting regular updates on the Read 180 social channels, so Facebook, Twitter, as well as you can check out any updates on the Read 180 educator community. But we hope that you have found that these 3 sessions have given you really practical tips that you can use to start thinking about getting back to school successfully, and really enjoying your experience as a Read 180 teacher. So we're wishing you a happy rest of your summer. Please stay in touch, and we will be sending out updates on our fall series for our office hours very soon. So thanks again, and have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.